The hexagon is a super great base layer for all kinds of fantastic quilts. Today I'm going to walk you through how to make one that is kind of hypnotic. Let's get started. That's right, I'm gonna walk you through making this awesome quilt you see behind me today, and we're gonna actually use triangles to make our hexagons. So we're gonna start with strip set rows, and before we even get too carried away, you don't even know what you need. So let's talk about supplies. So I am using this awesome Creative Grids triangle ruler. They come in a lot of different sizes. Mine's a 12.5 inch, so it spans the entire distance of my strip sets once they're made, right? We also need to get ourselves a fantastic solids bundle for this kind of a quilt. Of course, you can do this with any fabrics. I'm just going to walk you through the one I made. This is Robert Kaufman Lavender Fields, and I love it because you can see that the colors basically gradiate, and that's one of the tricks to the setup in our strip set rows. So we're going to need that, and then just for a little bit of that modern splash, that modern feel, I added an accent color. This is the cyan. It's a fun kind of green turquoise that I love against the purples. I used it for the binding, and I used it for a few triangles that you see floating around in the quilt. You're going to need about a ½ yard for that. Hopefully you've got all that information. We also have a cool printable in the link below that'll show you the management of your strip sets. Now you're totally ready to start your sewing. So you have your strip sets, and you're gonna make 2 of every family, and each family has 5 pieces in it. So here you see, I have 1 family, and as I pull it aside, you'll see I have identical twins basically, and these sets are gonna graduate from dark down to light as I float through the sections. And the easiest way to do that is to just take your roll apart and lay it out as the manufacturer sends it. So we're going to move these out of the way here. We'll need them in a few minutes to show you how to cut. So as I was unpacking this, I just found that I had 2 of everything in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unroll it. And I've already started making some of our samples for today's video out of the stack. So those ones have been consumed. So as I go through here, I'm pulling out, and I'm pulling out some of my colors like you see, and that one got rearranged for later. Some of these pieces will have 3 in them, and that's the bonus where you get some of that little extra magic happening. So I just go through my whole stack and I pull them out like this. And then what I'll do is I'll find a grouping that looks fantastic together once they're all laid across the table. And then I choose those 5, and like I said, I make 2 sets just by simply grabbing 2 pieces. And I'm gonna start up at the top where my selvages are. I'm not even gonna trim these off at all. I'm just gonna use that edge from the manufacturer. I'm going to bring them to the sewing machine. And one of the things some of us will struggle with is these long strips of sewing. So I've been working on some techniques, and some of it is how I hold my fabric, and a lot of it, especially if you're sewing at a big table, is I want the weight of my fabric up on my table here. That's going to help a lot in these long strips. Now I'm going to go ahead with a 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and I'm going to begin sewing. And as I do, I'm also pinching the fabric down together about 6 inches. I'm going to switch my finger over, let that float through, stop, and then I'm just going to realign. And what I'm really doing is I'm looking at this edge along here to make sure that both of my pieces of fabric are lined up. And I'm just pinching them. I'm not pushing, I'm not pulling, and I'm going to sew all the way through those, adjusting every 6 inches or so. And then that way they all come out really nice at the end. I'll be back after I get out of caffeinated mode after I finish this up. Well, you saw me use the back stitch there, even though I don't really need to, because I'm going to be cutting these strips as they're finished down into triangles. However, I forgot to point out, when you're going to be cutting your long rows into other pieces, it's a good idea to shorten your stitch length. So if your stitches are shorter, they're less likely to come apart after you cut those seams. It'll make sense as you're working. So I'm at a 2.0 stitch length right now instead of our normal 2.5. And then as I return over to my pressing station, this is a trick some of you may or may not know as well. And I like this a lot. What I'm doing is I'm coming with my right sides together, and then as I bring up my nice hot iron, I'm actually coming into my seam now, and I'm basically kind of setting it and then opening over the edge. And this will also help make a nice crisp seam allowance. a nice sew-in set of rows, and I'm going to press after each sewing so that everything is nice when I have all 5 colors put together there. So I want to show you how to build these triangles. We need to get busy on that. So I'm going to not finish sewing all 5 strip sets into that. Like I said, the printable will show you how to do that. I've gotten them already made over here. And I want to talk a little bit more about some of the colors, and I'll bring it all back together at the end of the video in front of the quilt and show you the quilting and the color management and some of the unique things that happened. But I did mention early that these are a graduation of color from dark to light, from dark to light. This one is more subtle. This one offers higher contrast. They're both used in the quilt. When we're looking at this though, I want to pick a top side for where my ruler is going to be working. And if you really want a lot of the hexagons that form stripes around there, we're going to need to make sure we cut them so we have opposites. This will make sense. Now, what we're going to first start doing, I'm very right-handed, and I will need a rotary cutter, so it's going to be back over here in my Sewmando vest somewhere. It is in the Sewmando vest somewhere. I was looking for my other one with a pretty blue handle. Silly me. Okay, so here's what we really want to do. Now let's focus. Rob, focus. This is important. We're going to cut the lines in the sewing, the lines in the fabric. I need them to line up with the lines in my ruler so that everything looks really accurate when I'm done. I'm going to always start with the tip of the ruler at the top edge of my fabric, and I'm going to run long, and that's okay. All of my strip sets are the same width top to bottom. Your first cut, and it's a good practice cut, we're going to take one triangle off, but as we do that, this triangle here, as you can see from this triangle here, I need a 1/4 inch up here for the way that the pieces go back together. So we're not going to cut this line right to the edge. We're going to slide over a little bit so I can finish it off later. And now I'm looking at that white line on the seam allowance. I'm looking to make sure those lines are running parallel. If I need to make little bits of adjustment, I can with each and every cut. And here we go. I'm going to cut once through here this way, like that, and that's freed that up. Now, to make the next triangle here, I could spin it on a Lazy Susan, which is a great choice. I'm learning to cut more left-handed because that's the safest way to do this. And I'm just going to go ahead here. And the reason I don't want to move my ruler right now is I have it so accurately placed. Okay, so I made that cut, and this triangle here has a wide, dark strip and a narrow, light strip. The next cut will be made using your ruler by taking the ruler, spinning it around like that, right? That's super easy. And remember, we need to line up the top of the ruler to keep everything working correctly with the top edge of the fabric. I'm looking at this line to make sure I'm still accurate. My next lines I'm looking at are the same lines I was looking at early on. And then now I'm going to have to cut left-handed again. That's going to get old for me. So at this, after the first cut, I spin it and make a mess. We'll get rid of those. And because of that, now I can work through right-handed for the rest of the project. But you have to make that first right and left-handed cut. Okay, so here we are back on target. My tip is up here. My lines are lining up this way. I'm double checking as I go through here. And now as I cut this, I'm going to end up with a darker, narrow, and a lighter, wide strip. And what happens there is you're going to get about 5 triangles out of each one of the strips. That's why you're making 2. So you have plenty of the matching triangles so that you can make either the checkerboard hexagons like I've got behind me, or you can make the strip hexagons like I have behind me. So we just take each row, we cut it down piece by piece, and then I'm stacking my triangles back up in order so that I can find them later on. It's easier to work through my design wall time that I love so much, right? Now, as I spin this, let's say we're having problems. Right now, usually they do, but I'm not. But let's say I was having problems. And what would problems be? Problems would be as if I'm cutting over here, these lines are no longer square within my ruler lines. And that means my triangles are going to get off. So what I can always do is I can make a correcting cut over here and fix it along here if necessary. Fortunately for me, I'm going to be able to get one more of these triangles off of here beautifully, and I'm still just looking at these lines, and they're running perfectly parallel to the seam in the strip set and the ruler, so I just cut all the way through like this, cutting them down. And at the end, I'll show you, you're going to have one of those last triangles, and that's where I'll show you how to fix that cut with this ruler. So you're just one slice away from that. Here. That was one of my sample squares. This is awesome. Now, check this out. What happens here is I have the cut I've just made. Now what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the center line that adds the, I'm going to use the center line, which is the straight line here, and I'm going to slide it down so that the tip lines up here again. And then I've got this line here. I'm going to cut this line here like this. And now that as that is cut, you can see I still have that 1/4 inch I need necessary to reassemble the rows. Now, I'm going to talk about assembly so that you can see it in the quilt when we get there, because it's a little tricky mentally, right? We build these back together in rows on the design wall, and they are going to go with a short end up against a long end. That'll be placed in there like this. Okay? So as these go through, all your triangles basically form back into these rows as they go together for the construction. But follow me now to the quilt. Let's talk about some of this awesome stuff that's happening. One of my all-time favorites is right here. This is the checkerboard style design, right? And with this, you can see that it kind of rotates its dark and light colors as you go through there that way. And that is formed by using the same strip set rows, but I'm going dark to light and light to dark when I build it. Here is the construction of the row. So I'm bringing half of the hexagon together and the bottom half of the hexagon together in the next row. So do all of your design first and then the resewing of it together. Now, here's another fun one, maybe easiest to see up in here. This one, I used all of the same exact triangles to form a hexagon that has stripes that go around it, which I think is really, really cool. Okay, some of the other things that are going on, I'm using 3 and 4 of the different triangles to form the hexagons and get all the different colors that are coming together so that it feels similar, but it's giving you a little bit of a twist. Remember, the whole concept within this is I was trying to play with something that would really kind of mess with our eyes visually within the color and within the layout of the hexagons themselves. But I also wanted to give myself some place that was really fun to do the free motion machine quilting on. So the free motion machine quilting we did basically started by drawing some lines with my ruler that followed the actual construction of the hexagons themselves. So you can see some of these lines, but they weren't pronounced enough. So then I came back in and I did a bunch of free motion machine quilting in the background areas to cause those lines to lift off. And then as you see back here in some of these fun alternative color triangles that I've created, this is where I wanted you to really be able to see the machine stitching. So I put a lot of time and a lot of focus in, and also demonstrating the same motifs you find without the quilt. So I know this video is a little bit like cart in front of the horse style, but I want you to be thinking when you're doing these off-the-wall style designs, I want you to be thinking about the entire process as you're building, because as you're sewing these pieces together or as you're designing it, you can be dreaming, what will the quilting do for this? What will the layout do for this? What will the binding do for this? I cut the binding for this project halfway through the quilt. I was so excited about that cyan color. Now, I promised you construction and we haven't finished. So I've got one more step to show you, and that is simply sewing these triangles together, and then I'll let you get into your own design area. So let's take one we'll be able to see. I'm going to use one here that's the opposite colors. So when we're sewing these together at the machine, it's just going to be straight lines from tip to tip. That's why we have that extra 1/4 inch up there. So I make sure that my lines are going the way they want. And because they're triangles, I could sew them together like this. I can sew them together like this. Or I can sew them together as I showed you like this. And that's the other thing I was trying to point out with all of the different design elements that are happening behind me. So let's do it together like, let's do it like this so we can see a neat hexagon starting to form when we're done. So we're going to line up these 2 squared out tips, these 2 triangle tips down here, but it's just the same edge. And at this point, what I like to do, if possible, is I like to use the actual seam allowances from the strip set rows to make sure I have my marker. So I'm holding here. I'm also pinching down the road. I don't know if you can see all the way through the machine or not. I've got that next little grip. And we're gonna sew here. And then I'll pause for a moment. I'll make sure the next two seams are aligned if I can, especially on the ones where I want the colors to come together nicely. I'll sew that together right there. And we're gonna finish out with a nice edge right there. So you did see me backstitch that, and the backstitching is important on this part of it because we're locking those triangles together. Head to the iron after each triangle you put into. Don't do this to assembly line and just press it. I'm not worrying about pressing the seams open, just one direction, right? And you can probably see here that hexagon is starting to form together, but I don't want you to get too focused on the hexagon. Remember, you're sewing back together the rows you've already designed on your design wall. So one of the next pieces is going to be this triangle coming back in here to continue on the row. And then let's talk about those end pieces really quick, right? Those half triangles we made earlier. These pieces right here will stitch right in to fill in, and that's what allows the edges to become square again in the quilt. And if you look at the quilt real carefully, you'll see I generally used the same two triangles in each position so that they didn't distract your eye too much. They just were kind of the background color there, and then it's also another fun place to add in some very basic quilting elements, right? So I certainly hope you've been hypnotized by this crazy hexagon layout. Remember, it's super simple and easy if you just make your strip set rows first and cut your triangles and enjoy your time at the design wall. There's 1,000,001 different design opportunities for you. Have fun, and we'll see you next time at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.